Hello, I'm Candy Thomas, Regional Soil Health Specialist with the Soil Health Division in the central part of the United States.
Hello, my name is Jamie Arthurs. I'm the State Resource Conservationist for Delaware NRCS.
Today we're going to be looking at a couple of different farms to tie together all of the learning that you've been through for the past 9 modules. So we're going to be going through how important soil biology is in soil health management systems. And we'll be looking at a few soil health management systems today.
We'll start our in-field soil health assessments at Jay Baxter's farm, and then later today we're going to move over to Dallas Wright's farm. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 3 of our soil health and sustainability for field office staff training. Glad the weather's great today. It was a lot better than the last time we were out here. Looking forward to a good day today. We've got soil health cards and buckets for each one of the teams. The plan is once we break from here, we're gonna break into our teams, move out into the field. We're gonna spend approximately an hour out there. We're gonna come back up here, and then we're gonna have a discussion about what each team found as far as the soil health indicators and what their rating was on this particular field. But as we all know, in order to be able to do the soil health card, there's some information that we need to get as far as a background, as far as management and different things like that on the farm. So this morning I'm happy to have Jay Baxter here with us, who is the farmer on this particular tract of land, and he's going to kind of give us a brief synopsis of who he is and what he's been doing as far as management on this farm over the years. So, Jay?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Jay Baxter, and I am outstanding in my field. So here we are at Baxter Farms. I am 4th generation. We've owned this piece of ground for, probably 40 years or so. I think there was a period of time there where we tilled it, didn't own it, and then we lost it, but nevertheless, it's been in a cover crop rotation now for about 12 years, to the best of my knowledge. And for the last, I think 5 to 7 years, it has been in full no-till and cover crop. So we've lost a couple years from time to time due to weather with cover crop, but that's the new regular for us, is 100% all out no-till and cover crop to the best of our abilities when time and weather allows.
Okay. And Jay, what's your typical crop rotation on this farm?
So we grow agronomically corn and soybeans. We also grow sweet corn for processing and lima beans for processing. This farm has actually even grown a little bit of edamame, but that's just kind of a experiment for us to play with a little bit. Okay. So that's a typical rotation, is those 2 vegetable crops and corn and soybeans.
Okay.
Small grains is, honestly, I can't get it to pencil out very well, so that one usually gets bumped off.
Okay. And as far as cover crop on the farm, what's your typical cover crop of choice or cover crop mix of choice for this farm?
Economically, rye is the cereal that we tend to go to, just because of the economics of it and the bang for a buck we get out of the cover crop itself. It gives me a good biomass, gives me a lot of a crop that we can leave on top of the soil and utilize as a mulch. And we also, I personally love hairy vetch. If anybody's heard me speak, I think every 3rd word comes out of my mouth is hairy vetch. So that one, it's out here now, is hairy vetch, along with some daikon radishes. So we started to rotate those 2 around some.
Okay. So you do all no-till cover crops, and then this track is irrigated, so you typically have a higher yield. Yes. Or expect a higher yield on this farm.
Of our acreage, we're probably 85 to 90% irrigated. I can't, honestly, I can't justify farming without it. So.
Okay. All right. Now, one thing that we did notice out here, you do use some vertical tillage
Correct.
implements on this farm. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So we'll use vertical tillage, and I've kind of learned that lesson the hard way, not let the operator set up the vertical tillage tool, because a lot of old school operators want to try to disc a piece of ground even though they're not pulling a disc. So you can see where we are here. In my opinion, it's worked a little bit too much, but that's one of those things. It's an end-row, it's a headland, and that's just what you kind of have to accept. As we get out into the irrigated part of the field where a lot of the corn fodder there was a lot more biomass there, because of the irrigated crop, you'll see it's back to where I like to see it, that we aren't hardly even disturbing the soil. We're just sizing that material. And the purpose in that was to incorporate the cover crop that we broadcast. So this field was actually broadcast with the what was and kind of technically still is the Sussex Conservation District's cover crop air seeder. And so that went across this piece of ground after the corn was harvested, as a matter of fact. So we needed to do something to incorporate that cover crop because the corn fodder was not able to cover up that seed and give it an opportunity to germinate the way we like to do it. So,
Okay. Now, as far as nutrient management on the farm and pest management, do you use any type of amendments like poultry manure or anything like that?
Sure,
on this farm?
yep. So along with the farm, we're adjacent to 8 chicken houses. So, besides that, we actually import chicken manure, but we are under a very long history of poultry manure usage here at Baxter Farms. So, yeah, we have to follow the guidelines of our nutrient management plan, and we are on a 3-year crop removal rate of phosphorus. So that hinders us from the amount of poultry manure we can use on most of our acreage. There are some acreage that, we have the opportunity to utilize poultry manure on a pretty regular basis. Other than that, we are following typical agronomic practices. I try to look at things from a bottom line standpoint. So maybe I'm a little bit more atypical in regards to that, not just the farmer that says, well, there's a chance that we've got something coming as far as a pest, so we're going to go out there ahead of time, we're going to blanket spray the whole farm. I try to not just use a shotgun approach and throw everything at my ground. And the more I learn, the more I'm realizing that there's more to it than just the bottom line. There's a lot of long-term effects that we still don't quite understand about the things that we do apply to our soil that wasn't necessarily intended to be on the soil, but through the crop or just the aspect of spraying or applying, that it's getting to the soil. And there's some evidence showing that there are some negative impacts from these applications. And so we're trying to stay on the forefront of that and understand that, because I've got another generation coming. And we want to make sure that, just like I had the opportunity to do the best that I can, I'm trying to give them the best foot forward and do the best I can for them. So,
All right. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate it.
Sure thing.
All right.
Any questions from the crowd?
Have you seen differences in inputs in relation to soil health?
So the question in regards to have we changed our inputs economically, I think, is kind of the question you're asking. So irrigation, you're right, irrigation's hard to track because it's all about the weather. Yes, in Delaware, in this small region right here, we have a substantial amount of rainfall, but unfortunately, it doesn't always come in the summertime when we need it. This past summer, we went about 4 weeks without any substantial rain towards the middle of July into August. And so those inputs are that's just life. And I try not to pencil them out on paper too much, because that's just my time. Summertime irrigations are my life. I've got 36 center pivots, and you won't see me around unless I'm in my truck or working on a pivot. That's just a fact. But the other inputs that we work with on the farm, yes, we have started cutting them back purposefully. We have cut back. We utilize planting green. I'd say 75% of our crop that gets planted green. Even the sweet corn and the lima beans on certain occasions. Sometimes the lima beans we go into a dead cover crop, but for the most part, all of our crops go into planting green. And I've found that I can actually purposefully cut back on that input of that one pass of burn down, or We once were at a burn down, a pre-emergent herbicide application, and then a planned post herbicide application. And what we found is that pre-emergent application we can skip if we can manage that cover crop correctly. It actually will hold the weeds off until we come back in with our planned post. We're noticing a lot of beneficial insects in here. Don't know that I've cut back on any insecticide, truth be known, but it's something that we keep a very close eye on, because that's the last thing I want to do is injure them and take away. The reason I love hairy vetch so much, and again, there's another sentence with the word hairy vetch in it, but I can provide myself 80 units of nitrogen out of a good hairy vetch crop, and very seldom do I have a bad hairy vetch crop. That's huge for us. When we talk about the cost of seed and the cost of just that input, how minor it is versus, I got a price the other day, and it's, even if I can get it delivered am I allowed to say it? Am I allowed to talk numbers here?
Yeah.
$550 a ton for 32% UAN solution. That's double of what it was last year. Luckily, that vetch seed hasn't gone up. Well, if it doubles, I'm still money way ahead on that. So we've actually bought more vetch seed this year, and that's our intentions, is to utilize that legume as much as possible moving forward.
Very good. Any other questions for Jay?
How many acre inches of water are you putting on throughout the year?
Again, that depends on the year. An average corn crop utilizes 1/3 of an inch a day. When it's in its from the R1 stage on, so from R1 to theoretically dent or beyond dent, past the milky stage, we are supplying 1/3 of an inch a day to that crop. Usually that is not 1/3 of an inch a day, but it's 2/3 of an inch every 2 days. So that's our mindset. So we supplement the rainfall. So to answer your exact number, I do not know. I don't remember the math off the top of my head, but that's how I calculate it, is by utilizing a checkbook method. And Phil taught me a real valuable lesson. Don't ever walk out into a field without a shovel in your hand. And that's same with summertime. We can walk out and just grab a little bit of soil and it'll tell us whether it's dry or not. And here, summertime, it's dry. We cannot over irrigate our land.
All right, thank you, Jay.
Sure thing, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Today we're out here at Jay's farm, and we're going to go through the infield soil health assessment. So this comes from our soil health tech note 450-06 that was released by the Soil Health Division, and it has a pretty good amount of comprehensive instructions within there. The nice thing is, if you have the whole deal printed out, when you get to the soil biological activity, there's a little bit of a key in here for the different kind of soil critters to look for, because I know that's always really difficult to figure out what you're supposed to find when we're looking at the soil biology. But this is a pretty comprehensive checklist, essentially, that you can work your way down through. So on the front sheet, initially you'll have your management history from the interview that we had with Jay when we first came out to the field just a little bit ago. And it goes through the type of crop rotation, their tillage system, how long they've been doing the same type of management, how many months per year is the soil covered at least 75%. And as you can see here, compared to where we were standing earlier, there is a significant difference in the amount of cover that we have. Is it grazed or not? We know that that's probably a no. Our cover crop's a consistent part, and he answered that. So hopefully you all got these first 13 questions kind of figured out, because it's nice when you have the producer with you when you do this, because then you can ask them these questions. You don't have to try to assume anything, but I know there's times when the producer's busy and we can't get them to come out with us. So then we have to make a few assumptions or give them a call back later on and ask, are there any areas out in your field, since he's doing irrigation, that may have some issues with ponding? And so if you can't tell, you can skip them. We're not requiring everyone to work their way down and answer every single indicator on these sheets. We're just asking you to get as many of them as you think you can. The nice thing about this infield soil health assessment is it doesn't take very long. It has a minimal amount of equipment needs, so you don't need to have a pH meter, you don't need to have an electrical conductivity meter, any of those things. I mean, you can do that, and they're a nice tool to showcase the landowner with the EC meter, if how much nitrate, nitrogen in their soil. The pH meter, you can give them an idea if they're having issues, with even low pH or a real high pH. And that can give them a little bit of ideas on how they can change their management. So if you turn to page 3 on your sheets, there's this nice set of indicators. And like I said, in the instruction book, and I'll put this out here, I'll put this right here if anybody wants to take a look at it while we're doing it, if you have any questions. But otherwise, we wrote this thing so we pretty much can help you get through them. But it's nice if you have the booklet printed out so that if you need to, you can go back to it, because it is very intensive instructions. I mean, there's a lot of really good information in there that'll help you answer any one of these different indicators. So for the very first one, essentially on the left-hand side is the information about your place that you're doing the infield soil health assessment. And as we stated in the classroom, we made this infield soil health assessment so that if the management is similar on many different fields, we'll call that a soil health management unit. They are starting to call them SHMOOs or management unit, whichever you want to call it. And you'll put down your location and the field or fields if you have many that are similar, and then also who you're working with. One nice thing to have, it talks about soil map units and soil moisture. There is NRCS created this little handy dandy pamphlet. It's called Soil Moisture by Feel. I don't know if y'all have ever seen that. If you're in irrigation country, it's a really great document to have. It folds up, it's a pamphlet that tells you how to take soil, squeeze it, and then let it go. And from the different photos in there, it'll tell you how much percent moisture you have. So most of our irrigators want to have it, at least 30% moisture. Once it gets lower than that, they'll know then from his checkbook method that they will want to, turn on their irrigator. It's a little different method than the checkbook where you're just turning it on. And I put this much on regardless. This is really monitoring the system out in the field and looking at how much water you really need. So it'll save you a little bit. Or another way is putting on tensiometers and soil moisture meters, obviously, and getting to a real high level of irrigation management. And that's always a potential for these folks, because it can save them quite a bit. In the case of it takes either diesel or propane to run those motors for that, and that can save them dollars, in the end. So we're always thinking about the economics just a little bit while you're doing this. So the soil moisture is kind of nice to know. Also, if you're using the penetrometer, which we do not have here today, but we've got its best second runner-up, the flag, which I prefer over the penetrometer any day of the week and twice on Sundays, because the penetrometer can be pretty problematic. There's a few issues, and we'll get into those when we get to that part. Then we also have our surface horizon texture. And on that soil moisture by feel document, there's the texturing exercise that's on there. There's a little bit of a tweaky problem, but you're in sand, so you're okay. Yeah. And it's with the fine textures. But your state soil scientists could probably provide you with a real quick one-page sheet that can help you do that. Or you can get your official soil series description, or you can use your phone and use Web Soil Survey, which will georeference you to your location and tell you the soil type. You can click on the soil that shows up on your page, and you'll get the official soil series description, which will give you that top horizon that we generally work on in management schematics. It'll give you your percent sand, silt, and clay, which is pretty nice. So then you'll know your texture. That will allow you then also to fill in your soil map unit. I know back in the day when I was working, we had case files, paper case files. Maybe that's not the case as much anymore, and folks are just using, you know, phones and doing that type of thing. But we always had a soils map and a paper soils map. So it's always good, you know, to have your paper soils map, which will tell you what soil type you are on. And according to this photo here, I don't think we're that far out. It looks like
We're in a pepper box.
Pepper box.
Yep.
That was a great name.
It's a sandy loam.
The pepper box sandy loam. Yep, I looked that up yesterday on your official soil series description. So this pepper box is a pretty good portion of this field. Around 30 acres of this field is this pepper box. And when you look at your description back here, these are brief generated, and I like to look at the official soil series description sometimes because it parses it out by horizon, which is kind of nice to know, because if you've got some real heavy tillage, then we're doing some mixing, and so we may not see the things, you know, that we need to be seeing in that top horizon from when they mapped it back in, I don't know how old your soils maps are. Some of them are in the 40s, 50s,
Yeah.
60s.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, you know, that's a lot of years between then and now that has been stirred. So it'll give you a pretty good idea. But according to this, the pepper box, like Jamie said, is on the back page because it's alphabetical. The pepper box component makes up 46% of the map unit. It's 0 to 2% slope, which looks about right? It's on flats and uplands. And the parent material consists of a sandy alluvial deposits over a fluvo-marine sediments. So that just means that this has been flooded by oceans at some point in time in its life cycle. And a depth to a restrictive layer is greater than 60 inches. So keep that in mind. That's pretty deep. But as we're digging here, you might see some management change, and we may have some restrictive layers a lot further up in that profile than we would according to what our soil survey says. That's why it's nice to have this to just see where those restrictions are. And it is considered moderate. Shrink swell potential is low, and if you look at that, why is the shrink swell potential low in this soil? What's the main component of this soil? If you're just looking at the surface, what's it look like?
It's sand.
It's sand, yeah. There's not shrink swells usually
Yeah.
indicative of a lot of our fine textured clays. So we know we're not going to see that unless we've done some stirring. So there can be clays, you know, further down in the profile. And if we've done a lot of mixing with some, you know, moldboard plowing, some of that can come up to the surface. So be aware that that can happen in your lifetime. The soil is not flooded. It is not ponded. So that's a good thing to know, you know, because then that might answer that question for us. If he's putting on irrigation water and he says he needs every bit of the water he possibly can get, then that means he's not seeing water standing out here more than likely. It's going straight down, and he's losing it to the lower profile immediately. A seasonal zone of water saturation is 24 inches during February, and organic matter content in the surface horizon is about 3%. So that's what they said back then. Do you have something you want to add to that?
Pretty good for us.
Pretty good.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
3%, that's probably a little bit on the
And
high
looking
side.
at the color, you know, you can see kind of, it is not the same color as our native soil here. So we've got some of the soil from the tree line behind us. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, because it's, you know, it's not disturbed, but it's not truly real. But if he had a grass area that had been cropped and it's now in grass, that's probably a better comparison, because, you know, that is indicative of what had been done here before. But this is a true, I'm not sure how old those trees are. They look like they may be at least over 30 years old for sure. So we know that it's been sitting for a little bit, and the potential then to see what could happen with continuous cover, continuous living roots is kind of showcased on this shovel here. So let's see, the soil does not meet hydric criteria, so that does mean that it's not inundated. Obviously, if he's not ponded, it's not inundated, right? So we don't have water standing, so we don't have hydric soils. So those are some things to keep in mind. But again, if you have your phone and you have the Web Soil Survey app, I'm going to open mine up and we'll look at and I'll tell you a little bit about the official soil series description, because in that part there is the section we'll use for the color. So I believe you've got a Munsell color book in there.
There is a Munsell book in there,
and
yeah.
that's one of our tools. So when Rachel was showing you all of the different tools that we have, she talked about the shovel, right? And a few of you've got shovels. They also talked about having a knife, and so we've got knives for sure. I think there was one in here as well.
Yeah, there's a couple trowels.
We've got some trowels, so that's nice. We've got flags, wire flags was another thing she talked about, or a penetrometer. So like I said, this is pretty inexpensive equipment that anybody can, get. You don't have to requisition, for a huge amount of dollars. This is probably our most expensive tool here, is this book. They are a little pricey. There we go. And so to get an idea of what page you need to be on, that's why it's nice to have that Web Soil Survey app so you can get in the right place. I don't know if this is a 10YR, so I would be guessing more in the 2s. It is 10?
It is a 10YR. Yep.
Holy buckets. It's changed. Okay, so we've got our page for that. And then the other things we need are water. And be aware, water can have different influences on your indicators. So if you know you've got water that has a lot of calcium in it, like your water's really hard, and you see a lot of, lime scale around your faucets, you might want to go to a dollar store or whatever and get you a jug of distilled water. Because then you know for sure that there's essentially nothing in it. Because the more calcium you have in there, that more that will affect our aggregates. And even in poor soils, you'll see no slaking. It'll make them hold together just like a really great aggregate. Even though in your mind you know something isn't right here, generally look to your water. So kind of nice to have a pH tester that you can test your water if you need to. I've used water from puddles even, believe it or not. Because I knew the water wasn't in a bad shape. Also, they talked about having a slake jar. I've got this, which essentially is your old water bottle you find rolling around in your vehicles, and you can just cut the top off right where the funnel is, and then fill this up and turn this upside down and get you either a clod or a ped, depending upon your management, and then place it in there, and it'll slake just like Jamie's in the classroom. You'll have to get a good size one because there is this hole. You can take this guy here, your little your lid, if you keep it, and keep it on it, and drill some small holes in there, and it'll treat a little bit like that. Another tool that we talked about are the sink strainers, and you can get these 2 for $1. I know they sell them on GSA because they've helped Iowa. They're a little more pricey, of course, through GSA, but you can get them for the whole state that way because these are pretty simple, and this is a really good test. And like I said, when I do things with landowners, they love this stuff because it's inexpensive. They can buy it. You can keep it in a shoebox. You can keep your slake jar, your sink strainers, and all of that together and just go out to the field. So then I use this to flip over with some small bowls, or those clear cups are really nice, so then you can see the funneling of the slaking, as it's sitting in these little wire meshes. Reason why we got this is to do a comparison for the slake section. So those are our tools that we need. So now we work down and look at the top. It talks about the indicator timing and use, and you can see there's a bunch of different icons on there. The little sun and the cloud is anytime, and we got after rain. So be aware that each of these indicators are pretty dependent upon the timing that you do them, because it can really show you some different things if you're not. Some of them are anytime, which are the good ones. If you're not really sure if he's had a rain or anything, try to do the anytime ones. Like I said, you don't have to do all of them, but try to do as many as you can. Also up in the upper left hand corner, you can see we've got our resource concerns. We got compaction, the soil organic matter depletion, aggregate instability, and soil organism habitat loss or degradation. And then on the indicators, so we've abbreviated them: compaction, CPT, SOM for organic matter, AG for ag stability, and HAB for the habitat. So then on the indicator sheet, each of these indicators has one of those little shorthand versions. So if you wanted to, you could go down through here and look for the one that has all 4. And that will give you probably a pretty good basis of all of the resource concerns on there. And if you count them up, there's 1, 2, 3 that are for all 4. And then if you wanted to pick, ones that had 3 of them, because 3 is a pretty good, will give you another extra good bit. There's 1, 2, 3 more. So that'd be 6 all total out of the 11 that we've got. So when you start on surface cover, so we can kind of start on these, working our way down. So if you've got like a clipboard, that's nice. But the surface cover from plants, residue, or mulch is greater than 75%. And this is estimated. And if you look in our infield soil health assessment, it talks about doing the line transect method, like Rachel talked about, where you stretch out a tape and then you measure. But a lot of folks have been with NRCS quite a few years, and they can do it, by sight. Always look down, never look out, because it always looks like you've got a whole heck of a lot more coverage when you're looking out across this field. It looks like, oh my gosh, there's 100% coverage. But if you look straight down, you'll see a few little bare spots. I don't right here, but there is some right there, here and there. But I'd say, what do you guys think for coverage here? Greater than 75%?
Yes.
Okay, so on that first one, you'll want to check your box that yes, that it does meet criteria. So then our next one, residue breakdown. So now, how often did he say he tills out here?
He doesn't till. The only thing Jay uses is a turbo till, which he did use
Okay, so
this
vertical
fall
tillage?
to help with
Okay.
incorporating the cover crop.
Okay, it's not complete mixing, but it does enhance the breakdown. So be aware of that, because that's a breakdown that's encouraged
More like chopping, yeah,
by sizing of the residue.
Yep.
The only time we go across a vertical tillage is when we're either incorporating a cover crop or if we're incorporating
Okay,
manure.
so
So typically our stalks would be destroyed with a flail mower. That's our typical practice.
okay, good.
And so, like I say, the vertical tillage is a useful tool. And again, we used it here obviously because we wanted to get our cover crop in. And as in your area, you guys have a beautiful stand of volunteer corn,
Yeah.
which is kind of embarrassing for the cameras. So hopefully they can.
It's
edit
not
that
the
out.
worst that I've seen, Dave. This
Yeah.
is really good compared to some
We
of the
had a
fields I've
major
seen.
problem this year. This farm, the shorter season corn, they were under a lot of disease stress and they died prematurely, and we had an awful lot of header loss in just the early season corn. So I could not do anything about it. So we came in, like I said, and we broadcast the cover crop, so we needed to get that incorporated because we had already been across the field with a combine. Typically, we will use a flail mower and just mow our stalks. And then the only other time we'll use vertical tillage is to incorporate chicken manure or to destroy the cover crop itself.
Okay.
In the lima bean instance, where we utilize hairy vetch for that 80 units of nitrogen I talked about, that late in the season when we're planting that crop in June or July, that hairy vetch becomes problematic as it starts to senesce. So we'll get in front of that and we'll actually theoretically roller crimp it. We're not even disturbing the soil at that point in time. All we're doing is just matting that stuff down and sizing it, and works out really well for us. So what you see here is not typical to Baxter Farms, but I think it's typical I think, right, it's typical for Sussex County.
It is, yeah, I would say, yeah.
Yep, I mean, those are good things to know, because that's part of that landowner interview. Without that, if you made the assumption that, oh, they're doing vertical tillage here, so then they're sizing the residue. But if we look at residue breakdown and we take a look, and I see somebody right here that's a good example. In the actual booklet itself, it fell down here. Let me get that real quick. When we go to the residue cover page, and you remember those photos that Rachel had on her presentation the other day, they are in here. So it talks about looking at residue breakdown, and we want to try to look at the biological shredding, fragmenting, cycling, and or decomposition of previous crop residue. So knowing, that he's not a regular vertical tiller is a good thing to know, because that's not biological sizing, that's human sizing. Yes. And so if he's very dependent upon the biological cycling or sizing, then you'll see that. And you can see the biology's working on this crop here right now. When we look at these stalks, you know, this is just this year, right?
Yep.
You had corn in here.
Yep. So this is
It's-
corn on corn.
Okay.
But we did incorporate chicken manure last year here.
So you
And so we actually, thanks to GPS, we'll split the row every time we'll double
okay,
up the
so
crop.
you're doing split rows.
So if you do,
find it.
if you can actually find
Right.
last year's corn stalks and root balls in 15 inches from this year's.
Okay.
in
So
theory.
this
Yeah, I
this
would
might
assume
be a
that's-
current year stalk. I would say it is. If we pull it up, you probably see some. Yeah, it's got current roots on it,
Yep.
decent roots. So what we're looking for, you see this black looking duff. It looks like dirt. This is what you want to see when we talk about biological breakdown. This black duff look to it is actually from fungi. So we know then that there's actual biology here in this soil and that it's breaking it down. And if we would have, you know, quite a few more months of some warm weather, you would see those fruiting bodies like you see in this photo in here, where they're kind of, you know, they'll push up a little mushroom, which is that basidiocarpa, the fruiting body of the saprophytic fungi. And as you come out here early in the spring, if you were to come back and reassess this, you could peel back this residue and you might even find that stringy white looking duff underneath there, like if you're in town and you have mulch, because mulch has a tendency to do this, you know, in your flower beds, and you peel that back and you'll just see that white fur. That's the saprophytic fungi, and that's what we want to try to see.
Is that beneficial?
Yes,
or
sir.
harmful?
Very beneficial. That's that precursor to breaking down to that particulate matter size. So when we have that saprophytic fungi, because right now we don't have, you know, our sizers out here, the shredders, we don't have a lot of arthropods out here as of right now. That's what does the work. And then come spring, they'll come back in, hatch out of cocoons or whatever. You'll get the nymphs and that. They'll start breaking this down into even smaller pieces. And you can see even this stalk, the inside. If you're questioning whether it's good or not, if you have a knife, does anybody have, like, I know I'm in the rural area, everyone has a pocket knife at some point in time in their life. Mine, I can't do because it's on the plane. So you can get one of these stalks. So it looks like it's pretty, like, oh, there's not much on there, right? And you get out here in the spring and you're probably thinking you're gonna cut your hand off. If you can just wiggle this knife down through here and you wonder if it's breaking down or not, say you're here in the spring. So this will have sat over the year, because most of the times you look at these during the springtime before planting. It's rare that we're out here. Yeah, rare that we're out here in the fall after you do it, but sometimes you do. You can slice that open, and then inside that pith, you can see there's a little bit of that blackness that's making its way through there. That pith will be black in there. So that's that saprophytic made its way through this stalk. This here, you can see some has made it through right now. Has made its way through that stalk there. And you'll see this. So when you see that, you know you've got biological activity out here doing something. And that's a good sign, a very good sign. Because it's breaking that down to that organic matter size, nutrient cycling, you know, your N that's in here, left over in your stalks from your chicken litter and your whatever else. If you said you're using urea, or you using...
We use urea, we use sulfate,
Okay.
we use UAN solution.
Okay, good. Yeah,
Whatever's
so
economical at the time.
right.
We
So
have a method to it, you know.
there'll be a bit left in this stalk. And they'll be breaking that down and converting it from that inorganic form, or it's kind of organic because it's in the plant, but holding it in place so that when your crop comes
So
in,
are we working counterproductively by utilizing a fungicide?
there's not been a lot of research that people have been doing on what kind of an impact that this, you know, adding full broad width fungicides have. And sometimes, yeah, we can say it could. I mean, I've had people from land-grant universities tell me, you know, in wheat country, that's where I'm from in central Kansas, by putting on, you know, a quilt, which is a known fungicide, it's not a contact herbicide, it's a systemic. So it makes its way through the plant and then it solves it from the inside out. They're saying that, oh, that has no problem whatsoever on mycorrhizae. Who lives inside that plant? Mycorrhizae. So those fungal hyphal strands, you know, come out of the plant essentially, and those arbuscles, those little tree-shaped formations that are inside those plant cells, inside those cell walls, are internal to that. So no one's really looked at to see what kind of a systemic fungicide has on it. They will say, yeah, contact fungicide will potentially, if it can get to the ground. But they think that there's enough canopy that a contact won't get to the ground and cause a negative impact. We're digressing, but anyway, yeah. So they're problematic. But what's even more problematic is treated seed, you know, neonicotinoids on seed corn. A lot of the guys that I work with are trying to find GMO corn now, because for that, this more native system, you know, when you're working with biology, it's much more beneficial, because then that'll keep your crabbed beetles around, which you want, because your crabbed beetles are what's taking out the rest of your soft-bodied moth species that are causing you issues in your vine species. So, you know, be aware of those things. Okay, so we'll move on. Okay, so residue breakdown, we saw that. That looks pretty good, so we'll check that as a yes. Surface crusts. What do you see here? By your shoe, what do you see there? Just a little bit, perhaps? We don't have much soil exposed, so to have surface crust, you gotta have good exposure.
I don't see any.
Okay. So what do we want to do? Do we want to check that yes or no? 5% of the field. I mean, we can't, if we were to do this, we would walk throughout the field or drive on a four-wheeler or whatever and take a look. Yeah. I bet we're probably not going to see 5% of the total acres.
I've walked quite a bit of this field.
There's
there's no soil crust.
So we're going to check that one as a yes. How about ponding and infiltration? So now this is the one where we can do, if you've got an infiltration ring in your buckets, you can take the time to do that. I would for sure, if you're gonna do it, do 5 of them in different areas throughout the field, because you'll get a better average and it tells you more than just one infiltration. So if you can get 5 rings, that's really great. But that's why, you know, we kind of have it on here for ponding. Otherwise, we do know his soils are not indicative of ponding, right?
Yeah,
they're coarse.
They're sandy loam. They tend to infiltrate very well.
So we'll say now, that's good, yes.
In Delaware, typically what we do is we'll do a small, we'll dig a small hole about 2 inches deep and about 6 inches across.
And fill it?
And actually fill it to about 1 inch.
That's
and then
good.
Time it
That's
to see
good
how
method.
long it runs
Yeah.
through, depending on the, whether it's sandy loam, you know, what type of soil it is, what type of texture it has.
Right.
You know, there's specific times that it needs to infiltrate in. Now, we did do a test on this one, and it infiltrated very quickly. So,
super.
You know, it's not
good to have that pre-done. Okay, so now those first 4 ones we did all above the surface, so we didn't need any tools at all. It was mostly visual. Now we're going to dig a hole. So you have the shovel. Do you want to dig or do you want to dig, Jamie? Dig us a hole about a foot by foot by foot. And we're going to call this our pit, essentially.
Yeah, you want the sample out in one piece?
Just dig it all out. Throw it on the side.
Okay.
Because we're going to look at the face of that. This is what you call a mini pit. And so the mini pit will tell you a lot of things from digging this out in the field. So then you're not disturbing, you know, this gentleman's entire field. You just got a little small area. I know in rangeland we do very similar things. We dig a mini pit, and the mini pit can tell you a lot about rangeland, even in pasture land. Any land use, dig a mini pit, because it tells you quite a bit about what's going on there. And the reason why I'm doing this is for the penetration resistance, because after he gets that out, we'll pick that face just a little bit with the saw knife. But for this one, all you need, I'll give you, each of you take a flag.
I can add about candy.
Okay. All you need is a flag. And if you've got a flag,
go ahead, tap it.
that's about the size of a root, if you think about it. A lot of our roots are not any bigger around than this flag is when we're thinking about root hairs. And all you have to do is just push that flag down to the ground and use your hands, and you'll if you feel any kind of resistance, big resistance, this isn't much. I mean, really, it's going in pretty good out here. Did you feel anything digging in your hole?
If you do it in several locations, you'll find some resistance. Now, Jonathan, I noticed you were able to sink yours down to the flag. Chris, so were you. Yeah.
There's one there.
Yeah. So
And the nice thing about the flag is if you hit a resistance layer, you can pull it out,
Yeah.
and then you can measure that guy and say, oh, 6 inches down, we found an old platy layer, potentially.
Yeah. Typically, we found that what we could consider that old plow layer about 6 to 8 inches down.
Yeah.
Throughout. Yeah.
So when we look inside this mini pit, and if we kind of flick this off, like a soil scientist would do, you might be able to find, you know, that layer that he's talking about. If we get it deep and wide enough, you might be able to see it.
Yeah, if you go right down to the bottom, Candy, it's right there. I hit it when I was digging.
So it's even deeper.
Yeah, at least there.
Right there.
Yeah, yep.
So it's a ways down there. So are we planting this deep? No. We're planting generally right about in that area. So we got a bit of there. So penetration resistance, what do y'all think? If we had a penetrometer, it'd be 150 psi or less. You think we're pretty good? I think so too. This isn't that bad. Back there by that vehicle, it was like a porch, you know, a concrete porch. It was hard. But out here, it looks pretty good. Water stable aggregates. Okay, so now you've dug your mini pit, so we can dig out a little aggregate from this surface right here. Just want to break that off. Take that off. Here's some of that mixed residue. Very small pieces. That's another thing you want to look for. That, I mean, he did a little bit, but there's some blackness in there. It's good. Here's somebody growing volunteer corn. A little corn plant and his roots. We get all that off till we get down to what we need. So this is kind of a root ball, essentially. There's quite a bit of roots in there. I got enough soil to do this. So we'll take these nice little guys here and we'll just break that up into pieces as best we can in there. And so while you're doing this, always be looking for somebody who's alive. And there's someone living in here. So sandy soils are not usually indicative of earthworms. It's kind of scratchy if you think about it. They're soft-bodied. They don't like being scratchy. But they must have some really good things going here because there's earthworms out here. I didn't expect to find earthworms as much.
We do have them, you know, just not as plentiful as here as in other places.
Isn't he great? I love looking for soil critters. I forgot my lens, you guys. I feel like a dummy because usually I have my little hand lens so you can try to find some of the smaller earthworms, the potworms. They're clear. They're in that little packet. There's some pictures of those. They're just like earthworms. They're just tinier. So we put these in here, break them up a little bit. Then we get some of this fancy soil over here. It came from the woods as our reference. Ooh, that's pretty. That's loosey-goosey stuff. It's dry. Oh my goodness. That's really loose. All right, you want to fill these 2 bowls with water? These are my ramen bowls, noodle bowls. They actually came with strainers, which is kind of handy before we figured out the sink strainer works better. So you fill them both till they're almost about full with BB. It's hard in sands to get BB sized with, you know, any kind of aggregate. Then you'll place them in this nice little bath. And while they're sitting there, oh my goodness, look at that.
It's actually hydrophobic a little bit.
It is hydrophobic.
So dry.
Yeah, this is the soil from the woods, and this is his soil from this farm. And you can see it's not wanting to get wet. So try to get it in there. Boy, it don't like it at all. It's almost like peat, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
How peat moss doesn't like to have water in it. This may become not a good useful tool because it's not getting wet.
Yeah, I'm really surprised it's that dry, to be honest with you.
It's pretty dry.
Yeah. I mean, it has been dry.
Okay. Well, yeah, trees suck up a lot of moisture. This is why using native soil sometimes isn't always the best. So if you had a grassy area adjacent, it might work a little bit better. But once you get them pretty saturated, then you pull them out. You can see we had a little breakdown already. And then you slap them on there. Then you take a look at that. This thing here is not even, it didn't even get wet all the way through, unfortunately. But what you want to see when we do this comparison, you know, and we could probably went over to those folks' yard over there and got some out of the grass. Might have been a little better than this woodland area. Grass is always a little bit better. What we want to see is how well does this soil stand up. So how many aggregates are there that are holding their shape and their size from being inundated in water versus, you know, this breakdown that we get along the edge. His isn't too bad, you know, when we look at it in the grand scheme of things, because he does have some, it's standing up. So that's why we call this kind of like a slump test that you do for concrete, that a lot of the engineers do. And the more it stands up, of course, the better the concrete mix is. There's other parts to that. And then we can also look at the water that runs off. How clear is that water? Nothing's running off of here because nothing got into there. I mean, essentially,
It's still dry.
it's still dry. Isn't that wacky? That's amazing. But if you can get it wet, it looks like it will form a ball. So that's pretty nice, you know, that it does that. Here we can do, you know, similar thing. And you can really feel that texture too when it's wet. So make sure you texture your soils while they're wet if they're dry like this, if you can get it wet. So that's just one way. The other way is to use a little ped from the surface. Stick one of your aggregates from the surface here. I'm trying to find one from the surface. That's a good one. And then you place it in there. Now in the instructions it says you let it sit for 5 minutes. And so if you kind of figure how square it is, if according to here, let's see, it says, well, it's better in the instructions than on the sheet, isn't it? Strainer structure remains intact with aggregates apparent. So if it takes about, after the 5 minutes, I think it's 75% of that ped is still there, then you've got some pretty decent aggregation. The thing to note is really you need to take this ped back and dry it out. So put it on your, I wouldn't put sand on my truck. I would have clay, but on your dash and your truck, it'll dry out really quick there. But then that will give you a pretty good, for instance. So we'll just leave this one set and check it out later, because it looks like it might hold up pretty well, which is a good sign. So then we get the soil structure. So you want to take a slice off of that, and we'll look at the structure. So we want to see granular surface structure, no platy or massive structure in the top foot of the soil. And as a comparison, we can look at our dry stuff. Whoop. We'll look at that kind of. There's nothing here. This it's almost structureless. There's some nice little aggregates in there. Kind of pick that off a bit so we can see what's under there, whether it breaks up or not. I don't know if I'd call that massive structure, but it's almost structureless too. It's got a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some at the top that has some aggregates to it, but I don't see any big plates.
Yeah, we kind of called it blocky a little bit.
There are some in there.
It's a little bit. The way when we looked at this, it looked like it had started getting more of that granular structure at the top.
Yeah.
And then it was still a little bit blocky as you went down in the soil profile.
Yeah, if you very carefully take it out, you can see it's breaking, how it wants to break up, and it is that little subangular blocky structure there. It has some spaces to it, and so that's not bad. It's allowing then water to run down through the profile. You don't have any problem with that here, obviously.
Yeah.
Water runs through the profile. So for soil structure, what do you want to do, yes or no?
Soil structure is good, yes.
Okay, so this is pretty moist. You want to get the book? While you're doing that, I'll look at the plant roots. Plant roots, are they going down through that soil? We looked at that on, let's see, here's a ball. What do you think?
Looks like it.
Yeah, pretty good. So we want to check that a yes. Biological diversity. So we found one earthworm, right? And we don't really have a lot of other stuff to take a look at. Here you can really see that blocky structure he was talking about in a plant root. If we look at the roots, we want to look and see if they're branched, if they go down through, if the roots are covered and they have this, what they call a rhizosheath on it. This is actually an old plant from last year because it's dry. But if we have, there's a worm, another worm. If we have this soil coating that root, they call that a rhizosheath, and they're really found in sandy soils. Make really great rhizosheaths because that allows the water in that mucilage that comes out of the root to keep water right adjacent to the root in sandy soils. Keeps them from drying out really quick. So they'll come first in sandies, and then later on as you get to finer textured. So diversity, if you look at, remember the 5 spheres or the 5 zones of the 5 biological hotspots, it was cover, roots, what else? Aggregates, we're seeing some aggregates. We also have porosity. I think we got pretty good porosity in sands. So the potential here is really good, right? We also probably have biopores because we've got these earthworms running through here. They're harder to see in sands because it's hard to break them up. So we can check yes on that. And how about our color?
That was 10YR32. Make sure you got the sun coming out from behind you, over your shoulder.
Yeah.
Kind of put the clod in your hand or aggregate, or and just kind of hold it on. In this case, I'm kind of familiar with these soils, so I knew it was 10YR page is what I was looking for. So then you put it underneath the color chips and pick the chip that's closest to as far as value and chroma. In this case, I felt it was...
They're saying 2.5Y. Back in the day?
Maybe back in the day, but not now.
So there's been a slight change from this is why it's nice to have a soil scientist with you on occasion to do these, because this old soil survey actually says that this pepper box in that A horizon is a 2.5Y42.
Yeah, when we colored this the other day, it was a
10YR.
10YR32.
Okay. And so that's why then the soil scientist will be able to tell you if this is really far off the mark. Soil color is it's iffy. It's one I skip a lot. I hate to say it, but it's one that I end up skipping because if you don't have the book in the instructions, it also talks about comparing with the non-disturbed. And so when you look at the non-disturbed here, it's a completely different shade, than this at
and
the
you got to
surface.
remember that's
It's
really
got some more
dry
yellows.
too. You need
It's
to
very
wet
dry.
it
It
up a
means
little bit
if
to
you
make
can
sure.
get it wet.
Yeah, if you get it wet.
We can't get it
exactly.
wet. That's unfortunate, isn't it? We can kind of here, I guess. This is kind of wet along the perimeter of this, and we see a little bit of difference. Grab some of that in there. It's a bit wet. It's moist.
Yeah.
Somewhat moist. Is it a little darker?
Oh yeah, it's definitely darker. Yeah.
So, I mean, that can give you a little idea. A lot of times, I have a tendency to skip color.
Gotcha.
Just because it can give you a lot of false positives. As you could see, it wasn't the same as our description, which the instructions say.
Yeah.
And it was nice to do the comparison. It's pretty close. I mean, to me, that's moving in the right direction when they're that close in color.
Yeah, as far as the
Very
color.
good. And be aware, manure and composted manure helps a lot for your soil color.
That additional organic matter. Yeah,
it does. It just I know when I was in New York that dairy effluent, the liquid dairy effluent, their soils look like your subsoil down here. But I thought, well, that's gonna just fall apart. It looked terrible, but it has something magical about it. It must be the coating on the soil. They could put it in a slake jar and it just sit there. And I was like, this looks horrid. And they're like, yeah, it does, but the manure kind of saves everything there. And I was like, I guess so.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up at this site. So we were pretty much yes on everything.
We were yes on everything. So if you look at the back of your sheet, if you've answered yes on everything, essentially you don't have a resource concern here. So unfortunately, if you're looking to try to get him some cost share through our programs, you got to be having a resource concern. So technically, all yeses. There's no issue. So he's doing a good job.
The one thing I would still be worried about is his soil structure to a certain extent, because you're still seeing some of that blocky structure even underneath that top granular layer. It's still got that blocky structure, which is kind of that history of up till when Jay started adopting these soil health practices. You're still kind of seeing that historical impact to the soil. So that's probably one I would say. He's looking good on top. You're seeing the improvements that he's making, but down and as you move down through the soil profile, you're still seeing some of that structure, that blocky structure that over time, if he continues doing these practices, you would hope that you would move that granular structure down through the profile.
Right. You want that cake-like structure to it.
That chocolate
cottage
cake
cheese.
Chocolate shake.
And this is not too bad for slake-wise. I mean, this has been 5 minutes, and we still have our PED pretty intact, which can be attributed a lot to his chicken litter adding here. If he wasn't adding chicken litter there, you can see there was a plate. It split perfectly into two. If he didn't have that here, this would be probably a little further behind than it is for sure. But that long history of that helped quite a bit. So you can see now it's breaking up into some plates. So a little bit of platiness, but I wouldn't throw him out and say that he's got compaction, except for over there. Yeah. But if you were, if you were to get out of your vehicle and just look there, boy, he'd qualify for all kinds of things.
And that's a good point. When you're looking at throughout the field, you try to avoid your end rows, your traffic lanes, stuff like that. He does have dedicated traffic lanes and end rows, so you try to avoid those areas. Obviously, they're a concern, because they do have those issues. But if you're looking at the overall, soil health of this field, you really want to get out away from those. So, so I would say he's still, got some structure, continue to work on the structure of the soil. And then, that compaction layer, it is still there. I know there's some places we're able to get through, but on average, you're probably going to find it's somewhere around 8 inches throughout the field. So.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of time to get through.
It does, yeah.
Lots of roots.
That's not something that, and that's any of these soil health practices that you're doing, it takes time to get for them to start having that effect, and start seeing it over time. So it doesn't necessarily fix it in a year or two. It's going to take 5, 10 years depending on what your issue is. So.
Yep.
All right.
Very good.
All right, so let's clean up and break, and we'll head back to the table. So let's go ahead and debrief from our last field visit to kind of debrief the group on what they found as far as soil health indicators and what the soil health was on that field that we just came from this morning. Tabitha, you go ahead down the soil health indicators and tell us what you found.
All right, so for surface cover, we gave them full points because coverage was 80% or greater of living plants and dead residue. For infiltration, we also gave it excellent, full points. Infiltration was in the highest infiltration category possible. Compaction, we gave it, in the good category, we gave it 7 points because the pin flag only got down 6 to 7 inches instead of the best, which would have been 8 inches. For organic matter, we were down in the fair category. We gave them 5 points because that's where the hue and chroma fell on the Munsell color chart. For soil structure and aggregation, we gave them 9 points, which is still in the excellent category, but on the low end of excellent, because in the top there was good aggregation, but towards the bottom, below 3 inches, aggregation was not as good. Soil went from granular in the top 3 inches down to more like a blocky structure. For earthworms and macroinvertebrates and pores, we gave them in the good category 6 points because we saw a few earthworms and a few pores, but not quite enough to be excellent. And for soil odor, we gave them full points, excellent, because the soil odor was a light earthy odor and it didn't smell bad at all. Okay. And so that put us in, overall in the good category, we had 59 out of 77 points.
Okay, so they were good.
They were good, but you have to understand, there's 2 points in here, is when you do these tests, what we're finding is those who have already incorporated a lot of soil health practices in it, you start to see the effect in the upper 2 or 3 inches. So if you're looking at the whole topsoil layer, which may be 10 or 12, and you start focusing on the lower part, you're going to see the legacy compaction, the legacy structure, and the legacy problems. So often in this area, when they've converted to these soil health practices, you'll see the changes in the upper 2 or 3 inches. And in fact, one of the things we forgot to do, and we went back later after Annie told us, is the color differences will be as much as 1 or 2 chroma different between the two. So when you do the soil health card, depending on what zone you look at, you can get 2 results. So you need to think about that. If somebody's already practicing these things, look, see if you do have that regenerated soil health in the upper part, because it takes a long time for it to drive down into the soil. So that's one of the things I think most of the groups noticed, or some of the groups noticed, but I think that's overlooked often. When we go to the field, you want to start in the upper 2 or 3 inches, then work down. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Annie and Jim Brewer, and we're actually talking about modifying the card to force you to look at those 2 zones. Because it's terrible to go out and work with a producer who's doing a lot of good work out there, and then you're looking at 6 or 7 inches down, and you miss all the good work in the upper 2 to 3 inches. So that's something you want to do when you go across these fields.
All right, thanks, Phil.